Here I am. God, I knew I was getting the TikTok Shives tonight. Something about it. I looked at the clock. I realized I hadn't clicked all the buttons yet. And I was like, I feel like I got one from David too. I got a TikTok Shives from Dana and I got a TikTok from David fucking Colby, you know? Anyway, hi everybody. Welcome to welcome to the show. The show. Glad you could make it. We had a couple people in the chat a minute ago who either this is their first time at an Ask Away live or just became a channel member. So either way, welcome. Thank you very much. And as usual, we're going to get started by answering pre-submitted questions from my patrons and channel members, and then after that, I will turn my full attention to the live chat. So if you are with us in the live chat and you have something you want me to pay attention to, something you want to ask me, or if you were just planning on being generous and throw it in a super chat or something like that, and you would like me to acknowledge that on the air, which I'm always happy to do, please, if possible, hold on to all that stuff until I get through the patron and member questions, and then I will be paying full attention to the live chat for the rest of the show. So here we go. Let's begin with the patron and member questions. And what better way to start those off than with Dana, who is in the chat and also submitted her question first with an exclamation point. And even better, it's a wrestling question. Dana says, "Happy Friday, Steve. I realize that while you have so generously granted us 1,000 characters to play with, we are on the brink of the weekend. Therefore, I shall spend no further time pointlessly pontificating. So, WrestleMania. Thoughts? Also, Eclipse. Thoughts?" Okay, I'll do the Eclipse first because that's we only got 90% totality here, so I didn't get to see like a proper full total solar eclipse. What we got was about 90% totality. So when the moon's shadow was as far across the sun as it was going to get from where I am, we got just it was like a little like a crescent sun. It was pretty cool. We didn't get the totality effect of like the midday twilight effect that you get when you're in an area where there's a proper full 100% solar eclipse. It looked like, a really cloudy day. It looked like maybe a half an hour or so before sunset, that kind of thing, at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So that was kind of cool, but not like the full totality effect. And yeah, when you looked up at the sun through the special eclipse glasses that I had, it was, you see the perfect round shadow of the moon mostly covering the sun and just a little fingernail, just a little crescent of sun on the edge. It was pretty cool. It was pretty cool. Now, as for WrestleMania, a couple other people asked wrestling related questions too. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time going down the entire card for this, but I'll talk about Cody because I'm wearing Cody's shirt. This is also the shirt I wore on Sunday. It's my Cody Rhodes shirt. Cody Rhodes, my current favorite wrestler, main evented WrestleMania and ended the show by winning his first WWE championship, WWE World Championship. And it was a really special moment for me as a fan. And, the match itself was all right. It had, it wasn't a bad match, but what really made it special was the finish and the ending and just the fact that Cody won the title. And, it's something that, and I know like wrestling is not everybody's cup of tea. And there are a lot of people who positively don't like wrestling. It's not just that they're apathetic towards it, but they have positive feelings against it. And I completely understand that. There's all kinds of really good reasons to not only be not a wrestling fan, but to be anti-wrestling. Like, I completely get that. But for people who aren't fans of it and sometimes wonder why those of us who do love it as much as we do, when you're not a fan, one of the things that I think a lot of people don't realize is how real it is. I mean, the matches are predetermined. The wrestlers are cooperating. It's not a real sport, right? It's a performance. But within that, when it's really good, like it was at the end of the night on Sunday, when it's really good, there's a lot of it that's real. Like Cody Rhodes winning a title that his father, the great Dusty Rhodes, never actually won, and holding up that belt and doing something that his dad, one of the all-time greats in the history of wrestling, never got to do. That's real, you know. And he's standing there in the ring after the match being congratulated by the other wrestlers who are his real friends and who he has real admiration for and real connections to. Samantha Irvin, the ring announcer, was clearly trying her best to hold back tears as she announced the winner of the match and new WWE Universal Undisputed Champion Cody. Like she was choking up as she made the announcement. That was real. Michael Cole, the lead announcer, choking up on commentary as he was talking about it. That was real. You know, there's a lot of it that's real. And it was a really special night. It was a good match. It was a good weekend because WrestleMania is 2 nights now. So it's Saturday and Sunday. It was a really good show. And people ask about it a little further down the list here. I'll get into somewhat more detail as we go along. But the special thing was the ending and Cody winning his first title in the main event of WrestleMania. And that's, for as fake as it is, some of the best stuff is real. And that was the case with WrestleMania this year. Next question from Matt L. I believe you've mentioned Battlestar Galactica in previous videos, so I'm assuming you've seen the 2003 revival series. Technically, 2-part question. 1, who's your favorite cameo/actor that went from Battlestar Galactica to Star Trek, or vice versa in the case of Dean Stockwell? And do you have any other Battlestar Galactica actors you'd want to see in Strange New Worlds or Discovery Season 5? Personally, I'm let down that they wasted James Callis in Season 2 of Picard. He's one of my favorite actors, and I just wish he'd stayed around. Okay, I mean, I can't really answer this because I have seen the reboot of Battlestar Galactica, but I've only watched the first season, and that was like probably close to 10 years ago now. Like I got the first season on DVD as a gift for one of my birthdays or for Christmas or something. And I watched it and thought it was great. Like really liked it, really liked it. But for whatever reason, I just never got back into it after that. Like I never watched the rest of it. So I have very little memory of it other than what I saw I liked. So, I mean, as far as which actors, I certainly couldn't tell you which actors crossed over from one show from a Star Trek show to Battlestar Galactica or vice versa. Like I have no idea. So I apologize for not being familiar enough with the show to be able to answer this question. But I will say James Callis playing Picard's dad in season 2 of Picard. Yeah, that did seem like a waste of that actor because he is, from what I remember of him in Battlestar Galactica and from what little he was able to show in that episode of Picard, he's a terrific actor. And yes, there must have been a better way to utilize him in Star Trek than to have him show up on Star Trek Picard. But then again, you can say that for all of the characters who showed up in Star Trek Picard. Isn't there, or all of the actors, certainly. Isn't there a better way to use this person than to have them do this? Yeah, there is. Brian Baker, Steve, I watched WrestleMania this past weekend, and it was the first time I watched any wrestling in years. I remember now why I enjoyed it. It was primal and visceral and kind of fun when I turned my head off. I understand what you mean by saying that it's a basic form of storytelling. I was wondering what you enjoy other than wrestling and Star Trek and how you relax when your job is mostly media criticism. Keep up the good work. I thoroughly enjoyed the Gatsby essay and wish you well, Brent. Well, thank you very much. I'm very happy with that Gatsby essay. I liked it a lot. It didn't get all that many views, which is a little disappointing, but you know that these things happen, right? I'm very, very proud of that essay and how it came out. And of course, and I love The Great Gatsby. It was nice to just talk about movies that are based on my favorite book, even though none of the movies live up to the book. It was just, I'm very happy with that video and I'm glad you liked it. I mean, other than watching wrestling or watching Star Trek, like there's lots of other shows I watch. There are lots of shows that I watch that I don't make videos about. And that is important to me. You know, to have things to watch, whether it's a TV show or a movie or whatever, where it's not research. It's not something I'm going to make a video about. It's like, no, I'm just going to watch this because I want to watch it and enjoy it. You know, like I love Abbott Elementary. I've been watching X-Men 97, the new revival of the X-Men animated series on Disney Plus. I think that's been terrific so far, like really, really good. I still watch The Simpsons, even though it's 20 years off its peak at this point. I still watch Bob's Burgers, which is still fantastic, like 11 or 12 years in. Um, what else? I try to watch 3 or 4 movies that I haven't seen every week, so I have some stuff to talk about with Jason on Late Seating when we do our members only pre-show for the Late Seating podcast. There's the main Late Seating podcast that everybody can listen to for free, where we review the movie that we've selected, but we also do a pre-show just for Let Me Listen podcast patrons, where part of it is Jason and I discussing other movies that we've watched in the 2 weeks since we recorded a podcast last. So I try to, keep up with that and watch movies during the week that I haven't seen before that I can then talk about with Jason on the podcast. So yeah, I mean, I guess that's kind of research, but it's very informal. Like I'm not taking notes or anything, and I don't have to write anything to prepare for that. It's just an informal conversation with my best friend that we happen to record about movies we've watched. So yeah, that's, basically just watching stuff or going for walks when the weather's nice. When the weather gets nice for good and it's before it gets too hot and if it's not raining or anything, I want to make it to the battlefield near here and climb a tree. I love climbing trees. Yeah, just doing stuff outside if I can, if I have time, watching movies, watching TV shows that I'm not going to use as the basis for videos, that kind of thing. That's what I do when I'm not working. Some random geek who is still wearing a mask whenever he goes outside. Good for you. I saw this question on social media. Would you accept 200K, but you're not allowed to do anything productive or that might be considered work, or work for 700K, but it's 50 hours a week every week? Now, yeah, I hate the vagueness of work and anything productive. Do chores count? No, cooking, cleaning, and doing laundry is a given. But if you cook, clean, and do laundry for someone else, that would be considered work. But doing those for yourself doesn't. Plus, if I were to take the 200K option, I would play a lot of video games. But I would want to stream some of them too. Wouldn't streaming be considered work then? And is the 200K or 700K just for 1 year or each year forever? Right now, I work 60 to 70 hours a week for 75K gross pay a year. I would easily take the 700K a year. Many of my friends would take the 200K option because they can't work anyway with disability. So Steve, 200K but never work, or 700K but work 50 hours a week every week? Well, I mean, sharing a lot of your caveats about the vagueness of the question, I would probably take the 700K. I mean, it would now if it was a specific kind of work, if they said it's not only you have to work 50 hours a week, but you have to work 50 hours a week doing this particular job, and it was a job that I really didn't want to do, or that I like 700K a year wouldn't make it worth doing that job I didn't want to do for 50 hours a week, I might consider taking the 200K option. But no, generally speaking, I would take the 700K. It's way more money, and a 50-hour work week is a lot. But for 700K, and especially if it was like working 50 hours a week doing what I'm already doing, like doing YouTube stuff, but just making sure I put in at least 50 hours of work a week, which I mean, some weeks I do more than that. I'm pretty sure if you add up everything, editing and writing and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I'd take the 700K. I would almost certainly take the 700K. Good question. Oasis. Hi, Steve. It is Monday as I'm writing this, and as I'm sure you are, I am feeling all of the good feelings from this past weekend at WrestleMania. How would you rate the card overall? What programs do you want to see in the immediate future? Are you excited for Damian Priest's reign as World Heavyweight Champion at all? Okay. Overall, I thought both cards were good. I thought both nights of WrestleMania were good. My usual complaint stands, which is I think 4 hours is too long for a show. I think 3 hours should be the absolute drop dead cutoff point. And there was enough filler in both nights of the show that they could have easily shaved both nights down to 3 hours apiece. But whatever. I mean, that's a relatively minor complaint, and I'm basically pissing in the wind about that. At this point, they're not going to do that on a regular basis. But no, I thought both nights were good. I thought there were some excellent matches. I thought Becky versus Rhea was terrific. I thought Gunther versus Sammy was terrific. I thought um, the whole segment of Seth versus Drew, and then Damian cashing in on Drew, and then Punk attacking Drew, and then Damian cashing in. The actual match, the Seth versus Drew match, was all right. Like, was nothing special. It was fine, but the whole segment from the match to Priest cashing in was fantastic. Was one of my favorite parts of the weekend. Uh, Drew winning the title, and then smarting off to Punk on commentary, and then Punk tripping him off the table and taking off the arm brace and hitting him with the arm brace, and then putting the boots to him on the floor. And man, those shots Punk was giving him looked good. Like, that was, oh, what a beautiful piece of business that was. I loved that. And then Damian coming out and cashing in, and finally getting that albatross off his back with the Money in the Bank case, which is a gimmick I really wish they would retire. I don't think it's a good idea to begin with, and it winds up just being a thing for a guy to carry around until the writers can figure out how to get it away from him. It's not a good idea. But yeah, I don't know if I'm excited for Damian Priest's reign as World Heavyweight Champion, because the World Heavyweight title is like the other world title. It's the one that they made up because Roman was the real champion, but he wasn't working as often. So they made up this other world title so that it could be defended more often on TV. I'm happy for Damian because I feel like in their eyes, in the company's eyes, that represents a step up for him. And I think it's time for him to take that step, whether he sinks or swims. It's time for him to get that opportunity and to take that step. He's been kind of floating in the mid card for a really long time. And he's got a great look and a great voice. He's good on the microphone. He's good when he's serious. He's good in the ring. I like him a lot. And I hope that his reign as World Heavyweight Champion is good. I think it's a shame that it feels like he's already sort of lost in the shuffle, because I think the match that everybody wants to see on Raw now is Punk versus Drew. And now that won't be for the title, unless Drew wins it back right away or something. But I mean, Punk versus Drew is the match coming out of that angle, out of that segment that everybody wants to see, and rightly so. That's going to be amazing. And Damian, who is the actual champion now, is kind of just off to the side, like, a third wheel, which is not where you want your champion to be, but we'll see how it shakes out. But yes, I would say I'm curious for Priest's title run. I don't know if I would say excited, but very curious, and I hope he does well because he deserves it. Ged Mayho, on average, how long does it take you to produce a typical Star Trek video from start to finish? If you had to put the various steps into a pie chart representing their total percentage of time, writing, filming, editing, final production, what would that chart look like? Thanks. Okay, I hate to disappoint you, but I'm not going to put together a pie chart. But I will say, in terms of actual time that it takes, in terms of hours that it takes, writing is by far the most time intensive. Like for a proper like Trek Actually video, like the one I'm working on for next week, the what I call the regulation Trek Actually video that I do one of every month, where it's fully scripted and then edited, and the video usually winds up being about 40 to 50 minutes long, and et cetera, et cetera. Writing is by far the most time intensive part of it. Writing is probably 65 to 70%, because the writing usually takes multiple days. The writing sometimes takes almost an entire week. And after that, filming is, if I'm very unlucky, filming is a few hours for one video. If I'm lucky, filming one of those scripted videos is maybe an hour and a half, just to get everything in the camera that I need. And then editing is maybe 2 days. And then editing and final production, they kind of smushed together. I consider that part of editing. So maybe a couple of days after I've shot it, that I have a completely finished video. So, I mean, writing by far is the most. And then after that, maybe, let's say writing 60%, editing 30%, filming 10%. That's very, very broad. And that's just based on my own sort of impression of it. I haven't actually tried to measure exactly how much time it takes. And also it does differ for certain videos. Like there are some video, like the script that I'm doing, that I'm shooting tomorrow, for the next Trek, actually, why 7 of 9 actually deserved better. The writing of that, I finished that script, mostly finished it 2 days ago. So the writing for that actually went relatively quick. But sometimes it's like Friday and I shoot on Saturday and I'm still working on the script well into the day on Friday. So it really depends. But yeah, writing is by far the most time intensive part. Eric Byer, I wondered if you would like to comment on the recent passing of former Senator Joe Lieberman. Thanks again for all you do. I really don't have strong feelings either way. I know he was an impediment to healthcare reform. He is the one who usually gets blamed for the fact that the Affordable Care Act did not include a public option. So I mean, I do not look kindly on him for that. I feel like even 20 years ago when he was, or more than 20 years ago when he was Gore's running mate and he was kind of at his peak as far as his influence and his importance in politics, he was already feeling like kind of an also-ran, like kind of a dinosaur, like kind of a relic from a bygone era of working together and bipartisan cooperation. And it's like, for good and for bad, whether we think that's a good thing or not, that period has passed us by in American politics. We are no longer in an era where productive bipartisanship is possible, at least not at the congressional, not at the federal level. And Lieberman was a guy who was representative of that. And I feel like that is always going to be a stain on whatever legacy that he might have had, is that he represented. And I mean, Biden has the same problem, to be completely frank. He's a person from a bygone era of, Republicans and Democrats, we can be friends and we can get along and we can work together and find common ground and get things done for the American people. I don't really think that's the world we live in anymore. And Lieberman was an avatar of that, and that world was gone long before he was. So MW Rittera, hey Steve, what's your favorite $5 word or words? My top 3 are rupestrian, tenebrous, and petrichor. I learned rupestrian a long time ago in art school and just really enjoy saying it. Unfortunately, it doesn't come up much. It describes architecture carved into cave walls. I will, however, shamelessly use tenebrous and petrichor whenever the opportunity arises. P.S. If Dana is in the chat, I'd like to know her favorites as well. I'm sure she has some good ones. Boy, not only does Dana have some good ones, but Dana and I spoke about this question actually a couple of days ago. I told her about this one, and she actually provided a photograph. All right. This is a picture of a bulletin board that Dana has in her classroom, and it's labeled fun words, but it could just as easily be called $5 words. There are some real, like, flummox. I love the word flummox. Cattywampus, which was a plot point in the last episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm. Cattywampus is a great word. Effervescent, that's a great word. Synchronicity, great word, and great album as well. What else? Tchotchke. Ooh, what a good one. Malarkey. They're speaking of Joe Biden. So yeah, there are some really good ones, and petrichor is on there. So there you go. That's that's Dana's list of, or at least a partial list, I'm sure, of some of Dana's favorite $5 words. As for me, inculcate, crepuscular. What else? Unctuous. Defenestrate. Yeah, there's some good ones. There's another one that feels like it's on the tip of my tongue that I can't think of. I was thinking about it earlier. Avuncular. Yeah. Lugubrious. I mean, come on. There's a ton. There's a ton, but those are the ones that jump to mind. General Contact Unit Problem Child. 1, you know what I'm worried about if Trump wins again and starts attempting to dismantle U.S. democracy? Well, a lot of stuff, but one of them is that the mainstream media won't be entirely honest about the danger of what he's doing in order to seem balanced and not partisan or alarmist. Like if Trump rigs the 2026 midterms for the GOP somehow, they'll be afraid to just call the results illegitimate. 2, Have you ever got some really bad news, thought you were coping with it, only to get really upset at something else minor because you were a lot more emotionally fragile than you realized? My maternal grandfather died last week. A few hours after finding out, I thought I was doing okay. Then I saw a slightly mean comment on one of my Reddit posts and almost felt like crying. P.S. He has since apologized, but like an hour after I found out, my dad looked at me and said, "Are you going to mope all day?" I wanted to punch him, but settled for just telling him to fuck off. Well, I'm glad you told him to fuck off, because that's a really fucked up thing to say to someone an hour after they found out that their grandfather died. Jesus Christ. Oh, by the way, your grandfather's dead. You're just going to mope about it all day? What the fuck? I think telling him to fuck off let him off easy. I'm not saying you should have punched him, but I mean, that at least earned a fuck off. Have I ever gotten real bad news and thought I was coping, and then it turned out I wasn't? Not so much. I've had the experience of getting really bad news, or being in grief about something, and knowing that it bothered me a lot, but trying to hold it together, and being able to hold it together for a while, and then something happens, or it just builds up to a breaking point, and then I kind of fall to pieces. Like, so I it didn't come as a surprise. It wasn't like I thought that I was doing okay, and then all of a sudden, I stub my toe and my whole day goes to shit. It was more like I know that I'm a wreck on the inside, but I'm trying to hold it together. And then, but that only, like, I can't do that. I can only do that for so long, and then it just all comes out. I've had that experience. I don't know if I've ever quite had the experience you're describing, where it seems like you're doing okay, and then it turns out you're not. And my condolences, by the way, on the death of your grandfather. I know how much that sucks. My grandfather, my paternal grandfather, was the one I was very, very close to, and this past February was 20 years since he died, and it still feels like that's not the way it should be. Like, it still feels wrong. It still feels like there's a I mean, I don't cry, I don't grieve. I'm past that point of it. Like, I've gotten over it, as far as I'm ever going to get over it, I think, but there's still that sense of absence, even after 20 years. There's that sense of absence. Uh, and I don't think that will ever go away. So, my condolences. Stephen G. Clenard, hey Steve, there's a credible rumor going around, wink, that Ewan McGregor will have a recurring role on Star Trek Legacy, playing the son of Mr. Home. I heartily approve. The superfans demanding Star Trek Legacy deserve nothing less than an exhaustive exploration of their favorite valet. What species was he? Why didn't he accompany Loxana Troy on her trips to DS9? Was he ever tempted to shove her head in a sonic toilet to get her to shut the fuck up for once? Anyhow, what's your favorite Ewan McGregor movie? Mine is Velvet Goldmine. Fight me on this. Hashtag I gots the mott. I think this is a great idea. I think this would be a fantastic. I think Ewan McGregor is an asset to any film or television project that he is a part of. I want to watch his new Showtime series. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet, but where he plays the Russian count who is under house arrest in the hotel in the early days of the Soviet Union. I can't remember, A Gentleman in Moscow or something like that. I can't remember the title of it, but I haven't had a chance to watch any of it yet. But I'll try to check that out at some point, because I love me some Ewan McGregor. And yes, I think Star Trek Legacy would be happy to have him as the son of the late Mrs. Troy's manservant. Yes, that would be fantastic. And of course, what a great show that would be. And my favorite Ewan McGregor movie, I mean, it feels like the easy choice to say, but I mean, it's still probably Trainspotting. Like, I think he's made some great films and starred in some great stuff. I mean, I thought he was great as Black Mask in the Harley Quinn movie, the Birds of Prey movie several years ago. I thought he was fantastic in that. But no, I think probably my favorite is still Trainspotting after all these years. He's so good in Trainspotting, and that's such a good movie. Action Saru! Nah, just Brian McKinley. Hi, Steve. I've been enjoying your series of retro reviews a lot, but I'm curious about your choice of Meridian for DS9's worst episode. It's not a great episode by any stretch, but why do you consider it worse than Move Along Home or Profit and Lace? Also, what's the plan for Discovery's 5th season reviews? Any interest from Jesse Gender in that Lower Decks video idea? Well, I chose Meridian because I wanted the opportunity to talk about that scene between Dax and Cisco when they think Dax is leaving. That's really the main reason why I chose that episode. The themes are not like the themes are an excuse to talk about a particular group of episodes. Like just because like most of the worst episodes that I chose for the worst episodes ever batch were not episodes that I had super strong feelings about as far as whether or not they were the worst of their series. I chose Spock's Brain because for decades it was the prototypical worst episode of Star Trek. Do I think it's actually the worst episode Star Trek the original series ever did? Not really. There are others that I think are worse. Code of Honor, Code of Honor I think is legitimately the worst episode of Star Trek ever of any show. Like that is definitely my personal and strongly held opinion. But most of the rest of them, it was either an episode like Threshold, where it is the consensus pick of the fan base, seemingly, that no, that's the worst episode, or it's one that is definitely on the worst end of the spectrum, but maybe not considered the worst, but one that I thought would give me an opportunity to talk about some stuff that I find interesting. And that was the case with Meridian. And I think it's Meridian and Profit and Lace is kind of a fight. I'm not sure which one of those is worse because those are both pretty bad episodes. But I like Move Along Home. I don't think Move Along Home is a great episode by any stretch, but I like a lot of people in the comments to Meridian were like, this isn't the worst episode of Deep Space Nine. Move Along Home is the worst episode. And I'm just not in that camp. Like it wouldn't make my top 10 or anything, but it wouldn't make my bottom 10 either. Like, I think it's a lighthearted, frivolous, fun episode. I have a ball every time I watch it. So I know Meridian is way worse than Move Along Home for me. And also the Discovery's 5th season, I'm going to, at this point, the plan is wait until the entire season is out and then just do a cumulative video for the entire season. And then after that, at some point, I'll probably do a video about the entire Discovery series from start to finish, sort of assessing it overall and its place in the franchise and what its legacy may end up being. So, but no individual episode reviews for season 5 of Discovery. And I don't think I've actually talked to Jesse seriously about doing a Lower Decks review, a Lower Decks video. We may do it at some point, but I think Jesse and I are both busy enough with our own stuff. I would love to do a video with Jesse at some point. And if it was a Star Trek video where we talked about Lower Decks, that would be great, but I haven't really discussed it with her. So I'm sure she'd be interested. It would just be a matter of when are we going to do it and what's it going to be. Keith Parker, hey Steve, thank you for sharing the information I sent you last time about the NASA Artemis program. These are incredibly exciting times in space exploration and research. It's important to get the word out that our public space program is thriving. Now on to science fiction. I've enjoyed your series on worst Trek episodes. For TOS, I actually think And the Children and Plato's Stepchildren and Whom Gods Destroy are worse than Spock's Brain. As you said, Brain has good pacing. Those other three are so painful, tedious, and insulting as to be unwatchable, in my opinion. Lately, I've been watching both Space 1999 and The Prisoner, and was particularly wondering if you've seen The Prisoner. If you have, would you consider doing a video on it? Truly amazing show that holds up to this day. Thanks for all you do. Yes, I have seen The Prisoner. I love The Prisoner. It's a great show. I might do a video on it if I thought I had something to say about it. That's the challenge. Like, I don't want to just do a video about something because I like it, just to be like, oh, this is pretty cool, right? And it's been a while since I watched it. If I went back and rewatched it and felt like I had a take on it or a thesis relating to it that would make a good video, I would absolutely do a video about The Prisoner because I think it's a terrific show. But I have no idea what that would be at this point and no plans to do that. But yeah, Prisoner is a great show. David Colby, Professional Hater. I've been enjoying Invincible. If you haven't seen Invincible, you should check it out. It's a well-animated, incredibly well-written, supremely well-acted superhero show made more for adults, while not going too far into edge for my tastes. It's gory, but it is gory with intention. But you know what it's not? A deconstruction. People keep going, wow, Invincible is such a good deconstruction, or Invincible is a bad deconstruction. But like, it's not either, because it's not deconstructing anything. Has no one else taken an English lit course? Does no one else know what a deconstruction actually is? It's not just when things are grim or gory, you know? It means to take the components of something apart and then examine how they might realistically work. Having an evil Superman isn't a deconstruction of comic book tropes. That's just Tuesday. Anyway, if I could remove one word from the discourse, it would be deconstruction. What would yours be? To make it hard, it can't be woke. I would take, okay, this is a word that I actually use fairly frequently, but just to challenge myself, I would take away reframe. Let's reframe that as XYZ. I use that phrase. I use that word a lot. And if we yanked it out of the conversation, I might be forced to be a bit more creative with my vocabulary. So I would say let's take out reframe. Yeah, I have only seen the first episode. I've only seen the first season of Invincible. I haven't caught up on the second season yet. I liked it. I liked the first season a lot, but I haven't watched the second. I'll watch it at some point. So thank you for the reminder that it's a thing that I want to watch. But I did like it, yeah. Okay, Debbie, I'm going to do my best here. Ools, books most students have read in themst. The Republicans are trying to rewrite history. Very disturbing to me. I think ools is schools. I think what you're asking is about the Republicans like taking books out of schools and trying to rewrite history in that way. Very disturbing. I'm very disturbed by that too. I think it's bitterly ironic that the Republicans are trying to promote themselves as the party of freedom and the party of free speech, which they've always done that. They've done that for my entire life. We're the party of free speech. We're the party of, we want diversity of ideas, not just diversity of races, right? We don't see color. We see a diversity of thought, diversity of opinion, right? And then they want to erase, queer literature. They want to erase anything that doesn't fit within their incredibly narrow parochial worldview, especially from schools, right? Schools and school libraries. Oh, that's got gay stuff in it. Can't have that. That has trans stuff in it. Can't have that. That has subversive stuff in it. Can't have that, right? They're the most censorious people on the planet, but they're the free speech warriors, right? So yeah, it's disturbing to me too, and very upsetting. And that's why it's super important to vote against them whenever you can. Agent Meister, whose vision is based on movement. Peldor Joy, Steve, I've been rewatching the early seasons of Scrubs lately and was wondering what you thought of the series. Did you ever watch it? And if so, what did you think of it? I know parts of it haven't aged well, especially in relation to the character of Todd, but it's a series I still love, and part of its appeal is that it was so often written in such a way that you could both laugh and cry at events taking place in the same episode. I'm not a huge TV watcher, but I'm hard-pressed to think of a show that had that effect on me. Granted, the writing wasn't as solid in the later seasons, but they still had their charm too. I don't want this question to go to waste, so just in case you have no opinion on Scrubs, then which of these would cheer you up if you were glum? Puppies, cushions, or daisy chains? Also, I hope you enjoyed the Eclipse. I've seen a couple episodes of Scrubs. What I've seen of it has been really funny. Like, I feel like if I did get into it, I would really like it, but I just haven't. But the few episodes I've seen have been really funny. Which would puppies? Cushions? Are cushions a thing that cheer people up? Like, oh, I'm so down. I wish I had a cushion. Like, I mean, it's nice to sit on. I have a cushion on my chair right now, but cheer me up. Okay, I guess some people really like cushions. And daisy chains, that could be like 2 or 3 different things. I have no idea what you mean by a daisy chain in this context. So I'm going to say puppies. Puppies always cheer me up. John Burns. Tuvix was an interesting episode, but if you want to take Janeway over the coals, you polluting torturer you, what about Species 8472? Or more specifically, those species that Janeway let the Borg assimilate because Species 8472 was unable to prevent the Borg from assimilating. I know Tuvix was a quandary, but unknown species were in danger because of her selfish actions. What do you think about my hypothesis? I don't care about those species. They weren't characters in the show. Is that kind of bloodless? Is that too much of a Doyleist perspective? I let the Borg can assimilate all the people they want off screen. I don't give a shit. I don't care about those people. They don't exist. Oh no, the Borg assimilated the Kabababoom system. Oh no, how many people? 11 billion. Oh, what a trap. I don't give a fuck. They're not real people. I don't care. I'm not mad at Janeway for letting the Borg assimilate people that we don't even see on the show. And is that really Janeway's fault? I mean, I'm all for blaming Janeway for stuff that she does during the series, and she does make some very questionable decisions throughout the run of Voyager. But is the Borg assimilating people really Janeway's fault? I mean, I don't know. I don't know about that hypothesis, John. Isaiah Taylor. So, Steve, why is the TNG episode Imaginary Friends disliked by fans? I just saw it last night, and I thought it was a fairly decent episode. It combines elements of science fiction, childhood magic, and R.L. Stine horror. Sure, it's not a best of both worlds or Yesterday's Enterprise, but it's one of my favorites. Shay Astor is Isabella, has to be one of the scariest villains in the franchise, in my opinion. Remember, she's a very powerful energy creature. Thoughts? Here's a pic of my Guy Bluford cosplay so far. And once again, Isaiah, I have to apologize. I followed this link, and it didn't let me see the picture, so I can't show the picture to people. But I'm sure your cosplay looks fantastic because you've shown parts of it on our monthly Patron streams in the past. And I mean, you got the authentic looking 1980s space shuttle astronaut blue jumpsuit, which is fantastic. I'm sure it looks great, but I followed the link and it said this content is unavailable, which usually means that the audience selected for the picture is not one that included me. So maybe it's not it's not set to public view or something. I'm not sure, but I couldn't see it. So I apologize for that. But yeah, Imaginary Friend, I think it's a good episode too. I've never had a problem with that episode. Why don't people like it? Maybe because it centers on kids. You know, some Trekkies, as I'm sure you, Isaiah, have noticed, and a lot of other folks have noticed, some Trekkies are just weirdos about things. Like any episode of a Star Trek show that deviates even slightly from the normal formula of the show, like they just have a negative reaction to instinctually. You know, why is it about these little girls? Why isn't it about one of the main characters? Like any attempt to experiment or think outside the box or do something a little different. There are certain Trekkies that will just react negatively to that no matter what. Oh, the one about the fucking little girl. Well, fuck, man. Did you actually watch it? Did you give it a chance? I mean, maybe, you can have legitimate reasons for not liking it. I'm sure not everybody who doesn't like that episode doesn't like it for a shitty fanboy reason, but like that's a shitty fanboy reason. If oh, it's not even about the people on the show. It's about some fucking kid. Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. I think it's a fine episode. Not one of my personal favorites, but it's not a bad episode at all. And yeah, you're right. The acting by both girls in that episode is really good, especially when you consider that they're child actors. Yeah, they both do quite well, and I think it's a good episode. Air One Fire, who can no longer sit back and allow the conspiracy to sap and impurify all of our precious bodily fluids. Hi, Steve. Work is going sometimes good, usually bad. But I want to ask you about Carbon Creek, the episode of Enterprise. This is by far the best episode of Enterprise I've seen so far, and one of my favorite in all of Star Trek. I cried. It's about Vulcans who crash on Earth in the 50s. There's Tamir, who looks exactly like T'Pol, who really cares about non-interference, and Mistral, who really likes the humans and wants to stay there forever. What I like is how well these characters are grown in the most satisfying way. He decides to live on Earth, while she decides that her values are less important than both Mistral and the people she meets during her stay. It reminds me of how Mando takes off his helmet because he realizes there are more important things to him. What do you think about the episode? Do you think it's the best ever? What are your favorite things about it? Will you review it? Will you review it this year? I'll watch this in the morning. Best wishes. I am not planning on reviewing Carbon Creek this year. I have my retro review episodes for this year already picked out, and Carbon Creek is not on the list. I mean, I'm going to review it eventually. In fact, since I know you like it so much, maybe I'll try to find a theme that fits it, and maybe I'll review it next year. Maybe I can build a theme around it and that Voyager episode where Janeway tells the story about her own great grandmother, who is also played by Kate Mulgrew, and I'll find some other episodes that maybe fit a similar theme. I'll build a theme out of something like that, and I'll review Carbon Creek next year, maybe. I don't remember having nearly as strong a reaction to it as you did. I haven't seen it for a really, really long time. I don't remember thinking it was bad at all. Like, I remember thinking it was a good episode. And again, just like with the Imaginary Friends one from TNG, an interesting change of pace and a way of doing a different episode, but still featuring one of your main cast members. It was a T'Pol episode where T'Pol isn't really in it all that much because Jolene Blalock plays another character who is one of T'Pol's ancestors. So you still get to feature one of your main players, but, you know, doing something a little different. So the idea of it, I think, is terrific. The concept of it is strong. I remember thinking it's a good episode, but beyond that, I can't really tell you anything. It didn't make me cry. I'm glad it made you cry. I'm glad you had such a, you know, a strong positive reaction to it. I think that's great, but I don't remember reacting to it that strongly. I remember thinking that it was a good episode. So, you know, it is not one I usually think of when I think of the best Enterprise episodes, but certainly not a bad episode. Wolfie Basach, July 19, 1545, King Henry VIII's flagship, Mary Rose, was cutting some nifty maneuvers just out of Portsmouth Harbor when someone pulled the wheel too sharply and the whole thing ended tits up at the bottom of the Solent. Nothing else of any particular note happened in British history until 438 years later, when it was teenage me's job to go on board the recently raised vessel and clean up what was generally regarded as being a bit of a fucking great mess. Each day I'd inch along the topmost timbers, replacing hose filters, carefully lifting my vulnerable crotch over a vicious barb which threatened to make my teenage nuts an additional part of the future exhibit. Eventually, I took up a hammer and smacked the fucker down, as well as taking out a sizable lump of the ancient ship to boot. And so my question is, have you ever vandalized anything? A public toilet, a phone box, or even one of your country's most significant archaeological and not to mention world-renowned maritime artifacts? I stole letters off the front of my elementary school. Years, not while I was a student. In fact, this was after I graduated high school. This was a year or so after I graduated high school. I stole letters off the front of my elementary school. Yeah, that's the closest thing. Just because it seemed like a fun thing to do, and I wanted to see if me and a couple of friends did it, just to see if we could get away with it, just to see if we could do it, and we did. So good for us. Yeah. So hopefully the statute of limitations on that vandalism has run out. Ben Douglas, hi Steve, my electric car recently got a software update that makes its supervised self-driving wildly better and more human-like. Previously, it was more of a novelty, but now it can handle itself well even in screwball situations like road construction and narrow suburban streets with oncoming traffic. That got me wondering, as someone who presumably isn't watching this space as closely as I am, what are your thoughts on the current state of electric vehicles and vehicle autonomy? I think it's two different issues. As far as electric, I'm fully in favor of the continued development of electric vehicles. I think electric vehicles, it's nice to see them taking up as much market share as they are, and I wish that they were taking up even more. I think just environmentally speaking, it's a good thing to have. Now, it would be a lot more effective environmentally if we were also producing more of our electricity using renewables, you know, instead of, because like if you buy an electric car and then you plug it in to charge it up, but you're charging it up with electricity that was produced by burning coal or oil, I don't know if you really like the amount of good you're doing is mixed, I think. But I think it's probably still better than driving a full-on, you know, gasoline engine vehicle. So electric cars, I'm all in favor of. Autonomous driving, I think the jury's still out on. I'm glad to hear that the feature on your car seems to be working better than it was, or is working better than you expected. But I feel like from what I've seen, like truly autonomous driving from vehicles like on the open road is still probably a little ways off. Um, I see the appeal. Like if it does ever get to a point where it's reliable and safe, I don't see why I wouldn't use it if I had a vehicle that was equipped with it. But right now, and probably for the near future at least, I don't see it as being a widely available, widely used option. But maybe someday. Shazy, hi Steve. Here's my reductive take for major political ideologies. Fascists weaponize nostalgia. Libertarians want to institutionalize their sociopathy. Conservatives are just, fuck you, got mine, despite their professed principles. Liberals will eventually do the right thing after doing literally everything else. Social democrats attempt to tame a predatory beast, capitalism, that will always resist being tamed. Socialists and communists, at their best, believe in a better future for all of Earth's people. At their worst, they always engage in petty infighting. Don't really have a take on anarchism yet. Basically, to me, it's a sliding scale of whether you believe social hierarchies are desirable or not, and if so, to what extent. What do you think? I think that's a pretty good, as you said, like a very generalized description of the various major stops on the political spectrum. I think that's pretty fair. I would say, and your bit there at the end where it's a sliding scale of whether or not you believe social hierarchies are desirable or not, I think I would add social hierarchies being desirable, the degree to which social hierarchies are desirable, and also the degree to which you believe it is feasible to live without them, right? Because a lot of my skepticism toward anarchism is built around the idea, not so much that I think the various institutions and hierarchies that anarchists want to do away with are good, but that I'm not convinced that we can live without them, or that it would be better if we didn't have them. It's not so much that the hierarchies themselves are good. It's just they might be better than the alternative, or they might be unavoidable to a certain extent. That's my kind of thinking about it, or that's my concern about it. But no, I think your descriptions to my eyes seem pretty good, pretty fair. Again, for just little bite-sized summaries of the core ideas behind each school of thought. Kara, hi Steve, hope you are well. Did you catch the eclipse? I did. I did watch some of it, but the religious chat on YouTube and the others saying that the event meant the end of the world was somewhat off-putting. I just have a question really about writing in general. I've been thinking about writing a Regency romance where one of the characters is a half-caste, and I tried to speak to someone on Facebook about it, but was blocked for 24 hours. Do you think I should go ahead and write it? I realize it's an uncomfortable subject, and my character does not feel this way, but I realize I could be opening a whole can of worms because we now seem to live in an era where any mention of people being treated as second-class citizens due to the color of their skin is like a red rag to a bull. But I would appreciate someone else's perspective. You don't have to ask this question if it's too uncomfortable, but if you do, and I've made the chat squirm, I'm sorry. Yours to a cinder, Kara. Well, that's very nice of you to be that concerned about it. And by the way, for anyone who isn't familiar with the term, half-caste is another way of saying biracial or multiracial. That's one of the ways they say it across the pond where Kara is. I mean, look, having not read the story, having not knowing what the character is or what the story is, it's difficult for me to advise you. I would say if you feel like you have something to say with the story and you feel like you have a good handle on it, it can't hurt to write it and show it to somebody who you trust to read it. I mean, it's not like, and if it turns out that you don't want to, like you write something and you accidentally write something that comes across as insensitive or offensive or whatever, and you don't want to show it to anybody else, well, then you don't have to show it to anybody else. But if you feel like you have a story in you that needs to be written or that you really want to write, I don't see any reason to tell you not to write it. And it seems like you are aware of what a potentially sensitive and problematic issue it is going in. So I feel like you'll have that thought in your head as you work on it. But yeah, I would caution anybody when you have an idea for a story that would require you to tread on shaky ground in terms of, dealing with issues of race or of gender or of sexuality or gender identity or any issue that deals with the personal attributes, the identities of especially marginalized people who in real life live with oppression and discrimination, especially if you are writing from a perspective from outside that group, where you are not one of the marginalized people and you don't have your version of that experience to call upon. I would always caution you to be very careful, to be very sensitive to the various issues, to be open to feedback from people. If they point out things, areas where you've gone wrong that maybe you didn't even realize you were going wrong in. But I would not, under most circumstances, I would not say, oh, no, absolutely not. Don't even try to write that. If it's something you feel strongly about, do your due diligence and try to be as open-minded and open-eyed about it as you possibly can, and try to be as empathetic as you possibly can. And if doing research is appropriate, try to do the research you need to do to find that voice, to find that perspective. But most of the time I would not say, oh, don't even, especially if it's just something that, where it's going to be like, you're writing it because you want to tell the story. It's not necessarily like you're going to publish it and it's going to, be widely read by millions of people. I don't see a reason at this point to say, oh no, definitely don't even write it. Just, be aware, be aware. Siamak, who is staring down 5 p.m. Greetings, Steve. I hope you're well. I'm curious. I know you've a distaste for nostalgia bait / member berries, etc. How are you feeling about the new season of Discovery? Spoilers for the first episode of the new season of Star Trek Discovery being essentially a continuation of The Chase from TNG. Personally, I think it's clever and allows for a Planet of the Week style adventure with an overall thread. That said, taking one of the episodes that gets the science so wrong and making an entire season out of it, that gives me pause. But science doesn't have to be right if the story is good. Fingers crossed. Well, now that we've seen 3 episodes of the season so far, my opinion hasn't really changed, because I watched the first 2 episodes that they released last week, and my thought was, I really like the character stuff and the actions, the action sequence with Saru and Burnham on the planet in episode 2, where they're fighting off those drones while Tilly and Adira and Captain Rayner are like working the problem from the technical side while, still aboard the ship. I thought that whole sequence was really, really well done. I liked that a lot. The plot with, the stuff from The Chase, the progenitors, I could not give less of a shit about that. Yeah, it's an Easter egg. It's a member berry. I don't like that. But beyond that, it's like, it's another quest. It's like, I'm not a fan in general of quest plots, especially stretched out over a season. I'm not a fan of, I will give them this much. The way they have set it up, it seems like they are in a good spot to avoid the your princess is in another castle problem. Because that was my problem with, I think, was it season 2 of The Mandalorian? Where it was a quest plot and it was like, okay, you want this thing, go see this guy on this planet. So Mando goes to see that guy on that planet, and that guy says, oh, sure, Mando, I'll give you this, but first you have to do me a favor. Go get this from that other guy. And it was like, sorry, Mario, your princess is in another castle. Like, it's, okay, before you can get this, you have to do this. And then in order to do what that guy wants, you have to do this other thing. And it's like, oh my God, can we just fucking get on with it? And Disco Season 5 seems to have short-circuited that problem by stating up front, okay, we're looking for a puzzle and there's this many pieces to it, and that's what we're looking for. And I think there are a total of 5 pieces to that thing they need to put together. And that's dumb. I'm not a fan of like, oh, there's a thing. It's a series of MacGuffins we have to collect and put together, and it makes a map. It's like, oh, they're looking for a map. Gee, I haven't seen that in a sci-fi show or movie recently ever. Oh, the plot is that the characters they go on as like a galactic scavenger hunt, and they have to put together a map or find a map or whatever. It's like, it just seems so boring and formulaic. And it's like, could you not have thought of anything else to be the plot for this season? But it's only 5 pieces, and there's 10 episodes in a season. So hopefully they will have all, assuming that they find a piece per episode, hopefully we'll only be halfway through the season, or maybe slightly more than halfway through the season by the time they've got all the pieces to this fucking thing. And then they can pivot and move on to another phase of it. Right? Hopefully that's what's going to happen. I've got my fingers crossed. But yeah, I mean, the character stuff is great. As usual with Discovery, it looks great. The action sequences that I've seen so far have been well done. The acting in the most recent one, especially Wilson Cruz getting to play outside of his usual character in this week's new episode, I thought was terrific. Story-wise, plot-wise, the 3rd episode really feels like a soap opera episode. It really feels just like a kind of a treading water. Like, yeah, they find the other piece of the thing that they're looking for, but it feels a lot like there's not really a cohesive story to it. There's not really a strong beginning, middle, and end self-contained story to it. It's very much like a book chapter episode. So I didn't really dig it all that much on that basis, but really good character stuff from all the major characters. I liked the stuff with Captain Rayner and Tilly. I liked the little twist. I saw the twist coming about why Book and Burnham were fighting the monsters on Trill that were nesting between them and the thing they needed. Like, I kind of saw that twist coming, because that's a classic Star Trek thing. That's a classic Star Trek trope that they went to with that. But that was fine. At least it had a point to it. Like, at least it turned and went somewhere. But, not a great episode, but not a bad episode, and good character stuff and good action stuff. So I don't give a shit about the chase plot, but I care about the characters, and I still think it looks fantastic, and I'm still entertained by it. And I hope that they can stick the landing and have a really great, final season. So those are generally my feelings on season 5 so far. Russell, good evening, Steve. And this is the last question. Good evening, Steve. After your latest retro review, it occurred to me I need to do a solid rewatch of Enterprise. But I was trying to rewatch that 2-parter that explained Klingons and realized this was set up with the Augment segment a few episodes before. Then you have the Into the Mirror Universe 2-parter. It feels like the 4th season was trying to bridge between their show and TOS as a whole. I'm sorry if I'm browbeating this issue, but I wanted to respond to your answer last week. Is this why season 4 of Enterprise is not on your fave list? Too many Easter eggs. I do slightly remember a non-favorite of Enterprise, which I of course like, was season 1's Detained, guest starring Dean Stockwell. It makes sense a paranoid group would result in that behavior. Is it morally right? No, we both agree there. But the episode in and of itself, I didn't think was that bad. Anyways, my final question, how would you improve Enterprise as a series overall and its finale? Thanks, Steve. See you soon. Yeah, I think one of the reasons I didn't like season 4 is because it did feel like it got too much into Star Trek stuff in a bad way for me. It started being like, oh, this is the show where we set up the stuff that you saw in the other shows. And that's just such a boring premise. It's like, that's such prequel shit. It's like, I don't need to see how we got, oh, it's the show. Don't you want to see how the Federation was founded? No, not even slightly. I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit. Don't you want to see about the early? No, I don't care. I don't care. I just want a good story with good characters. And I don't want their job in the show to be to explain how things that happened in a show that they made 30 years ago or 40 years ago at that point came to be. That's boring to me. So how would I have made the show better? I would have leaned into the lower level of technology. I would have made it feel less like a typical Star Trek show structurally. I would have tried to find things that previous Star Trek shows didn't do. I would have, I mean, as much as I love Phlox, and I think Phlox is a great character, and as much as I like T'Pol and how T'Pol became a good character, I would have a 100% human crew. I wouldn't have any aliens on the ship. They would meet aliens through their adventures, but the crew of the Enterprise would be 100% human. And it would still be, you know, there'd be men and women. It would be all, you know, racially very diverse. It would be a classic Star Trek crew, but no aliens, 100% human. And I would try to make it feel astronauty. You know, I would try to make it feel less typical Star Trek and more astronauty. And as for how would I improve the finale? I mean, it would be a good start to actually make the finale about the characters that you've watched on the show for 4 years, as opposed to making the you know, the emotional and moral crux of the episode a decision to be made by a character in a completely different series that had been off the air for like 10 years at that point, and set it within an existing episode. Like, well, I just thought, yeah. I don't know. Something else. Make it not a TNG holodeck episode. Make the finale of Enterprise not a holodeck episode from a completely different show that had been over for 10 years. That would be a good starting point. Okay, so that's it for the patron and member questions. And before I turn my full attention to the live chat, of course, we have just one more little piece of business to do, and that is to debut a brand new Stuffy short. So as is always the case, this will go up as a standalone short on my YouTube channel tomorrow at noon. But because you are watching live tonight or watching the archived version later at some point, it'll still be here. You get to see this brand new Stuffy and Friends short for the first time. So here we go. Please enjoy this brand new Stuffy short. Are you ready for me to blow your mind?
Yes, just in case.
Ha ha. You know also about the cookie sandwich, made of 2 larger cookies with a thick layer of sweet cream filling in the middle. But what do you get when you split the cookie sandwich in half, leaving roughly equal amounts of the filling on either side? Place a layer of sandwich cookies atop the cream of one side and place the other side back on top. You get the sandwich cookie sandwich.
Amazing.
Really?
I think it's your best idea since those sneakers you invented with the bottoms made of bouillon cubes.
Chicken soup for the souls? That's high praise, my friend.
I mean every word.
Ta-da! Oh, Andrew, you get diabetes. Yeah, maybe. You don't want to do... Yeah, sandwich cookie sandwich is not something you want to be eating like on a regular basis. It's a... Sandwich cookie sandwiches are a sometimes food. Let's not forget that, okay? Let's remember. Sandwich cookie sandwich. It's a sometimes food. Oasis, trust me, it's good. It's good. A sandwich cookie sandwich, it's delicious. Just in the line of duty, I actually had to eat 2 because I made 2 to make the video. I did one to kind of hold at the end, and then I did another one to actually make it on camera so you could see it being made. So I ended up with 2 of them. So I couldn't let it go to waste. I had to eat 2 of them, not on the same day. I had one day, and then I put the other in the fridge and I ate it the next day. But oh, so good. So good. Anyway, oh, Carol, would I have milk with it? Milk is really good with it. I think I had mine with coffee. I drank coffee with mine. But yeah, milk, of course. A nice tall glass of ice cold milk with a sandwich cookie sandwich. Sure hit the spot. All right, a couple of super chats and or member messages here. Let's see. Here's one from John Burns who says, watch Hot Ones. Conan O'Brien was on Monday. I want to watch that. Thank you for reminding me. I usually don't watch Hot Ones. No, nothing against it. It's just not something I watch, but I saw that Conan was on it, so I do want to check that out. Stephen G. Clark with a member message says, who would win a steel cage death match between Mr. Hom and Mayhardoon? Mayhardu, Grand Nagus X-Man Servant. How about a dance-off rap battle? I think Mayhardu would win all three. I think first of all, I think he would beat the shit out of Mr. Home in terms of size and physicality. I think he's got more rhythm. He would win the dance battle. And I think it's hard to tell because neither one of them really talk, but I can just tell by looking at him. I think Mayhardu has superior flow to Mr. Home. So I would bet 3 for 3 on Mayhardu. And here's another one from, here's another super chat from Oasis. Thank you very much. AEW decided to show the backstage footage of Punk and Jack Perry, and it proved that Punk was telling the truth. Tony Khan could not have misfired harder if he was EMH Mark II on Voyager. I do not understand the thinking behind showing that footage. I really don't. I don't see how Tony or anybody else in AEW could have thought that they would end up looking good from doing that. Even if it showed that Punk was, just a complete monster backstage, even if it showed that Punk was completely in the wrong and he was just going on a tirade and he was flipping tables and trashing shit. I mean, even if every nightmare scenario, biased young bucks favoring version of that story turned out to be absolutely true, Punk's gone. Punk works for somebody else. So showing the footage now, when it happened back in August, and showing it a week after Punk did an interview where he finally talked about some of the AEW stuff and painted a very unflattering picture of that company, it just comes across as, at best, it comes across as sour grapes, and at worst, it comes across as what I think it was, which was a desperate attempt to boost their rapidly plummeting ratings for their show. So I don't get what anybody there thought the upside was. It's just a bad idea all around. And yeah, the footage itself, you watch it and you go, oh, big fucking deal. Like you can't tell what happened exactly because you can't hear audio, but Punk walks up to Jack Perry. They have words. Perry says something that pisses Punk off. Punk shoves him. There's a little bit of a fracas between them. Samoa Joe pulls Jack Perry away to safety because I'm sure in any kind of extended one-on-one between the two of them, CM Punk would fucking wipe the floor with him. And Punk yells at Tony Khan and walks away, and that's it. Like, it's not an ideal situation, but the whole thing's over in like 10 seconds. And nobody's hurt. So it's not the end of the world. And like I said, Punk's gone and he's working for another company now. So what was the point of showing that? It certainly doesn't make their company look good at all. So yeah, I don't get it. I don't get what the point was. Also, another one from John Burns, April 12th, 1945, Roosevelt is dead. R.I.P. Words. He was a really good president. he was one of our greatest presidents. I mean, the whole, Japanese internment camps thing is a stain that can't be erased. And I feel like that needs to be mentioned whenever we talk about FDR, because even though he was a fantastic president, in many ways, the best president we ever had, that is still a major, major black mark on his record that should not and cannot ever be erased. But no, he was a great president. And the subject of one of my favorite jokes on All in the Family. There was when Maude was a recurring character on All in the Family before she got spun off and got her own show. Of course, Maude was like a classic, like 1970s liberal feminist Democrat, and she would argue with Archie all the time. And they were arguing about who were their favorite presidents. And of course, Maude is, a big FDR fan. And they're arguing about FDR. And Edith says, "Oh, don't listen to Archie, Maude. His whole family was for Roosevelt. And Archie says, "That was for 2 terms. That was it. We didn't know he was going to hang on to the job like a pope." I've always loved that joke. Steve Schmeling says, "I've noticed an awful lot of sex in your vids lately. Does someone need an hour in the holodeck?" No, it's not. There's no sex in my videos. There may be a little bit of sexually tinged humor. because the Star Trek video or the Star Trek episodes I've been reviewing have offered me an opportunity for that. But no. Harry Behemoth, I can relate to that. That's almost every time I go to the grocery store, I pass by the bakery and they have those cookie sandwiches, and I'm just like, what? But I usually don't get them. Every once in a while, I'll treat myself, or I'll buy them for work because I just so happen to have written an idea for a Stuffy video that demands that I buy them. Daryl Lett says, okay, Steve, congrats on the video, The Magic of Problematic Fave. I've found Motown to be relatively free of misogyny, but I've heard disturbing stories about Elvis, Lennon, Jagger, etc. Oh boy, I bet you have. Yes, indeed. There are some. Oh, sorry, 255 AD. The Trump part of your question. Yeah, I would be concerned about that too. That wouldn't surprise me. There is this very strong tendency among mainstream media to not say anything too negative because they don't want to lose their access, because they're worried about ratings, which they shouldn't be if they're the news. But the demands now that the news has been commercialized, they have they have to serve the marketplace just the same as anybody else. The news is no longer treated as a public good. The news is treated as a profit-making enterprise, and that is a big part of the problem there. But yeah, I would be concerned about that too, of course. 25 AD says, why do you think being anti-abortion is hurting the GOP recently? Is it anti-abortion people mad they're not worse, or conservative women who are secretly afraid of losing their rights, or both? It's probably a little bit of both, honestly. I do think that most of the people on the right online who seemed mad at Trump after he put out his little video seemed mad because he didn't go far enough. Like, they wanted him to come out and back a national ban of some kind. And the fact that he didn't do that is what pissed them off. But when it comes down to election day, I do think, in addition to those people, there might also be some Republican right-wing women who would not vote for Trump because they secretly think that abortion should not be banned. So I think it might actually end up hurting him from both of those groups. Andy Layler says, chicken soup for the souls had me genuinely laughing. Well, thank you very much. I'm glad you liked that. I like that joke too. Let me see here. Patricia Mercer, you think Drew McIntyre losing his championship wasn't a strong enough warning to not obsess so much over Steve? Exactly. See what happened to Drew? See, he lost everything. He only got to be champion for a few minutes because he had to make it all about CM Punk, and he lost everything. Let that be a lesson to you, Tony Khan. And also maybe just study how that program has been booked, so you learn how to do wrestling booking, because apparently you don't know how to do that. Yeah, 255 AD, this is a good point. More than once now, I've had leftists be like, I'm sorry your grandfather died unless you didn't like him. I get the intent, but why not just assume I'm sad if I mention? That's a good point. And yeah, if someone brings it up, you would assume that they're bringing it up because it's a sad thing. So yeah, but then again, people, relationships can be complicated, especially family relationships. 255 AD said, this is a good question, and this gives me a prompt to rant about something. So, you know how you don't like several hour video essays? I've heard people argue it needs to be that long because it's the video equivalent of a book. Thoughts? This is a fundamental philosophical difference on my part between me and the people who justify making multiple hour videos with that. It's not a book. It's a video. And to my way of thinking, this is, again, it's a philosophical thing. I believe that form should dictate content up to a point, not in terms of the specific content, not in terms of like how you present an argument or what your opinion is or anything like that, or what story you tell or whatever. But to me, a YouTube video is the equivalent of either a TV episode or a movie, right? It's something that ideally should be watched in a single sitting. Now, I know lots of people watch videos in multiple sittings. Sometimes I do that. I'm not saying that like you're doing anything wrong if you watch a YouTube video, you know, and you pause it and then you come back. Like I do that too, okay? But ideally, in a perfect world, just like with a TV episode and just like with a movie, a YouTube video is something that should be able to be consumed in a single viewing, right? A 4 or 5 hour YouTube video, I suppose you could consume it in a single viewing, and maybe some people do consume them in single viewings. But to me, the length itself is basically admitting to the viewer, I know you're not going to watch this all at once. And to me, that's just not what a YouTube video should be. And I don't really have an argument to support it other than a subjective one of just saying, that's not how I view it. That's just it's a philosophical difference. I think it should be something that you can watch in a single sitting. Just like it's not a book, it's a short story. A short story is a story that theoretically you should be able to read in a single sitting. Now, lengths can differ. And obviously, there's nothing wrong with reading a short story in multiple sittings. But in a perfect world, the difference between a short story and a novel is that a short story can be read in a single sitting, and a novel usually requires at least a couple, if not many more sittings to finish reading it. And it's structured accordingly, right? My feeling has always been, if you have so much to say, first of all, if you have a rough cut of a YouTube video and it's 5 hours long, take another pass at it and cut some stuff out. Because I guarantee you can cut some stuff out. I have yet to see a 3, 4, 5 hour YouTube video, including ones by people who are brilliant creators like H-Bomb and ContraPoints and Jesse Gender and some of my favorite people to watch. I have yet to see a 3, 4, or 5 or more hour YouTube video that I watched where I did not finish it thinking they could have cut a lot of that shit out, right? So my first advice is, if you come up with a rough cut of a YouTube video and it's 4 hours long or more, take another pass at it and cut some of that shit out, because almost certainly you can cut some of that shit out, right? And my second word of advice is, if you can't get it down that much further and you still find yourself with, you know, a YouTube video that's 2 or 3 hours long, make multiple videos. Make multiple videos. You know, or better yet, you know that you have a lot to say, you know that you have a lot of ground to cover. So write it like that. Write 3 videos on the same subject covering different areas. Like, make it a series as opposed to one fucking ridiculously long video. And again, this is just my personal opinion. This is just my subjective take. This is just my philosophy of how to approach it. But to me, it should be the video equivalent of a book. That doesn't make sense, because it's not a book. It's a video, and a video should be consumable within a single sitting. Kirok 2011 with a super chat. Sad news, Quantum Leap has been canceled. Thoughts? I'm a little bummed about it, just because it got, I never felt that it lived up to its full potential. I never thought that it got as good as it might have. It was improving as it went a little bit here and there. Like, it was becoming a better show as it went. And I assume if it had gotten a 3rd season, it would have continued to improve. And there were a lot of parts of it that I liked, but I can't say I'm surprised. I mean, it was always a likable show, and it was always a show I was rooting for. And occasionally it produced some genuinely good episodes, and it had, what I admired the most about it was that it was completely unapologetic about its progressive social conscience, and it had just blatantly, shamelessly, openly, proudly pro-gay, pro-queer, pro-trans episodes, right? And I think, unfortunately, in our society, we still need that. And having a network TV show that was willing to devote a couple of hours of its season a year, multiple episodes, to saying, hey, we're going to make this a message show like the original Quantum Leap was from time to time. And the message is, trans people exist. They deserve to be treated fairly. They deserve to be treated equally. They deserve to have their identities respected. Non-binary people exist. They've existed for a long time. There's a non-binary character in the second season of Quantum Leap where the episode is set like back in the 40s, right? So it's telling us like, hey, this isn't new. Non-binary people, trans people in general, like they have been with us the whole time. It's not like a fad. It's not like a new thing. And it was really, really wonderful to have a show that was willing to say that and to dramatize it in an appealing and compelling way. So, I mean, I'm going to miss it in that sense. But like I said, it was never a really highly rated show. It was never a consistently great show. I can't say I'm going to miss it all that much just in terms of what a good show it was, but I was rooting for it. And it is a little bit of a bummer that it's not going to get another season. And a couple more from John Burns here. First of all, he says Space 1999, the entire series is now on YouTube. Good to know. And then John also says, how might Biden's comments on Israel cost him? Well, there are still a lot of people who are fervently pro-Israel to the point that they think what is happening in Palestine is okay. What they think what is happening specifically in Gaza is okay. So if there are enough of them that are pissed at Biden for even moving slightly away from Netanyahu, he might suffer from that. And if he doesn't do enough, or he may not be able to do enough of it. He may have lost some people and there's no way he can get them back from the other side who are like, this is a genocide. There's no excuse. We shouldn't be funding this. We shouldn't be arming this. Like, it's whatever Biden does from this point on is too little, too late. And, he could lose votes that way too, Let me go back and find some of the ones that I have missed. Oh, my glasses. Summer Geek says, yes, Dana, glasses are sexy. Oh, I mean, they are now. Ale, thank you for saying, thanks for being awesome. Thank you for saying that. Harry Behemoth, Jim Cornette in the Hall of Fame soon. I wouldn't bet on that. Boxy Brown with a member message. Steve, I like the glasses. They make you look intimidating, giving off Hitman vibes. Thank you. That's exactly what I'm going for. And Steve Schmeling says Trump's claim of leaving it to the states is the same as his claim of if he'd fix the ACA. He said it to get the undecided rubes to vote for him. Then when he wins, he'll get rid of it. You're probably right. Evan Detremont, which captain would make the best president and why is it Pike? I agree with you. It is Pike. It is Pike would make the best president because he seems to because he's smart. He's brave. He listens to people. He tries to, he respects the, he respects the expertise of his crew and turns to them for advice and for help. And he seems to genuinely care about people, like in a real emotional, in the moment way. I think that would be good for a president. 285 AD says, how would you react if someone you're close to told you, are you going to mope all day the day your grandmother died? Oh, I wouldn't have been very nice. I wouldn't have been very nice. Kara says, what do you think about this gender swapped Silver Surfer? I am, first of all, the actress that they've cast, Julia Garner, is fantastic. I have loved her in everything I've ever seen her in. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm very curious. I'm certainly not, reflexively anti it. I'm curious to see where they're going. Anytime a comic book movie, especially, or a movie that is based on um, an established property with a pre-existing fan base, is getting a movie, and the studio doing it has the guts to do something unexpected and brave and outside the box that would risk pissing off certain portions of that fan base. I am automatically more interested in it. You know, um, so I am I'm super interested. And like I said, I'm really happy for Julia Garner, and I'm really looking forward to see what she does as the Silver Surfer. Um, 'I figured you would react to that, Dana, when I said glasses are sexy. And by the way, Boxy Brown, thank you so much for the $5 sticker there. I really appreciate that. Um, 255 AD says, why do Americans think by fetishizing bipartisanship? As bad as UK politics is, where one party wins, they take the stance, oh, we're in charge now, we get to do our thing now. I'm not sure if there is an American tendency among certain Americans, especially among older Americans, and this isn't specific to the baby boomer generation. I think a lot of people, when they get to a certain age, regardless of what era of history they lived in, there's this tendency of wanting to look across the aisle, wanting to unify, wanting to find common ground, wanting to leave the differences aside and focus on what we can agree on. And I mean, that's a really nice impulse, but it doesn't work when current conditions don't support that. I mean, I would much rather, if the Democrats, take more political control this election, I would much rather they say, okay, we won the election, we're in charge, we get to run the show now. Because here's the thing, you said, why do Americans fetishize it? Lots of Republicans don't. That's how Republicans govern. When Republicans take charge, that's exactly what they say. We won the election, we're in charge, we're doing what we said we're going to do. We're doing what we want. That's how Republicans do it. It's Democrats who fetishize bipartisanship and say, we're going to do bipartisan reform. We're going to reach across the aisle. We're going to get some Republicans on board with this thing. I guess the idea is that legitimizes it. But like, the fact that you won the election legitimizes it. That's why we have elections. Like, your claim to be, the fact that you have enough seats in Congress and a president willing to sign your legislation because you did that well in the last election, that means you don't need to get Republicans to support it. Like, the fact that you have that many people on your side that you can pass bills based purely on your party's voting along party lines, that's no less legitimate than if you got a few Republicans to agree. Like, if you have the numbers, it's completely legitimate. And it doesn't become more legitimate if you try to make it bipartisan. So it's just, yeah, I don't know. It frustrates me too. John Burns says, the right captain to be president is April. April, you know what? From what we've seen of April in Strange New Worlds, I mean, we've only seen him in a couple episodes, but he seems like a pretty smart, level-headed dude. So I'd vote for Captain Robert April. Or Admiral, I guess he is now. Let me see. What about Commander Sisko president? I mean, I think he would probably stop the Gazan genocide, but he might fuck some shit up other places. Like, I'm not sure about Sisko. He has a great moral center and he's a very righteous guy, but if the wrong people piss him off, he's like, you know what? Fuck those guys. Yeah, what's happening in Gaza is fucked up. We need to stop that immediately. But these guys over here, we're taking them out. Like, I feel like we might get more than we bargained for with Sisko as president. Steve Spelling says, last Ask Will, you mentioned Burnham just crying to piss a guy off. I say have her cry until she floods Pike's ever-growing quarters. Yeah, and that's it. Yeah, have her cry so much that Pike's quarters are flooded, and he has to keep opening doors and showing us never before seen rooms in his quarters to let the water out. Yeah, exactly. David Colby says, my belief over the years is that Democrats fetishize bipartisanship because they run on a platform they don't actually want to implement. Maybe. Yeah, I mean, maybe, especially with sort of mainstream establishment Democrats. I think that might be fair in a lot of cases. Rob Parada, that's called a mandate. Exactly. You won the election, man. That's what I so many times I've wanted to say to Democrats, like, you won the election, right? Now, look, I'll get to be completely fair. There have been many times in the recent past where at the federal level, like the United States Congress has been divided enough that, it's been a while since either side had a filibuster proof or a veto proof majority, right? Especially a veto proof majority, but even a filibuster proof majority in the Senate is 60 seats. It's been a while since either side had 60 seats. So short of that, or just short of having a filibuster proof majority, or just finally sacking up and getting rid of the fucking filibuster, which I wouldn't mind either. There have been many times in the recent past where Democrats have nominally been in charge, but have lacked the votes purely in their own party to pass legislation. And for purely practical reasons, they've had to try and find some Republican votes on stuff, right? So even though I don't like that, I understand that. But there have been so many times when the Democratic, it's like their starting attitude is, like in Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act was a great example. Their starting attitude was, let's see how much we can compromise and get some Republicans on board for this, when they didn't need to do that. And it's like, you won the election, right? Like you don't need anybody on the other side to vote with you on this. Like if they do, that's great, but you don't need to be changing shit to appeal to them. Like you won the election. But yeah. Evan Detremont, aren't the people in Gaza basically the Maquis? Not from the American perspective. Maybe from the Israeli perspective. But even then, I don't know if it's a perfect perfect analogy. But kinda, or at least you can make the not all of the people of Gaza. I think it's important to draw a distinction between the general population of Gaza and Hamas specifically. You might be able to draw a fair comparison between the Maquis and Hamas, maybe. Although the Maquis generally seemed a lot less murder happy than Hamas. John Burns says bipartisan spirit is part of Reagan's legacy. Yeah, perhaps. Boxy Brown says, given his untimely passing, please say 3 nice things about O.J. Simpson. He was really good in the Naked Gun movies. He was really good at hiding the fact that he was a horrible spousal abuser. So, he had some level of skill and a talent for duplicity and subterfuge. And now he's dead. So those are 3 good things. I mean, not the things that he was hiding weren't good things. The fact that he was a horrible spousal abuser, which he was for many years, is not a good thing. But he had a certain skill at hiding it that perhaps could have been turned to a positive to a positive use, but wasn't, because he was a piece of shit. Steve Schmeling says, a while back I mentioned Star Trek V and rock climbing. I realized Star Trek II had sandstorm. All kinds of crossovers. Rob Parada, yeah, they don't want to accidentally accomplish anything. Yeah, yeah. Um, Andrew Klein, good football player, good in the Naked Gun movies, good football player. There you go. um, Kirak 2011 with the super chat. OJ Simpson was in Roots. I liked his cameo there. I forgot that. What was OJ in Roots? I completely forgot. Ethan Horn says, I mean, the people of Palestine are the Bajorans, in my opinion. It's hard not to draw comparisons to Jewish peoples in the ghettos to that of their treatment in Gaza. The core difference is in the tech. Um, yeah, yeah. Like I said, I think. I mean, the Palestinians are definitely the Bajorans in the sense that, I mean, they are the occupied people, just as the Bajorans were in Deep Space Nine or before Deep Space Nine. Like they are the occupied people. But again, obviously not just because an analogy isn't perfect doesn't mean it's not useful. You know, the Israelis don't seem to be punishing the Gazans and the Palestinians in general the same way that the Cardassians were punishing the Bajorans. Um, the current operations in Gaza seem just blatantly genocidal. Like it's being done with the pretense of, oh, we got to, Hamas has to be eliminated, but the way they eliminate Hamas is just, bombing entire Gazan cities indiscriminately, and then saying that, oh no, we're being very discriminate, we're being very careful, and it's like literally every building in the city has been bombed. Um, so the Cardassians were like using the Bajorans for slave labor and robbing them of their resources. So it was a very different kind of genocide. The genocide of the Israelis versus the Palestinians, especially what is currently happening and what has been happening in Gaza since October, is of a different kind. It's more just like just full on mass murder, just full on military assault. Just military overkill to the point of we don't give a fuck who we kill. Yeah, which is obviously absolutely abominable, but not quite the same as what the Cardassians were depicted as doing to the Bajorans. I'm glad you like that, Boxy. Oh, yes, he was in Capricorn. OJ was in a couple of good movies. Steve Schmeling says, I also like Move Along Home. I felt it should be a bit later in the series to better establish Quark's feelings toward the crew members he might sacrifice. Yeah, but because it is so early, you can kind of look at it as a starting point of that. And I think it kind of works in that direction too. But I mean, the main reason why I love Move Along Home so much is that Joel Brooks is in it. And he's just hilarious. I love Joel Brooks. I like him in everything I've ever seen him in, and come on, this Diallo. Like, come on. He did that. Like an actor did that. You can tell he couldn't wait for that. He was like, oh, I'm going to do like a Vogue thing and I'm going to make it super dramatic. I'm going to come out of the light and it's going to be me. And they're going to be like, what's this? Diallo. And he just says this nonsense bullshit word, but makes it seem like it's really meaningful. And he does his little Vogue face. It's like, it's fantastic. It's just fucking fantastic. Super chat from Kirak 2011. Thank you again, my friend. Oh, Steve, I own Roots and Roots the Next Generation, and I watch them once a year. Humans need a reminder of the inhumanity, aka slavery. Love these videos. Yeah, Roots is fantastic. Roots is fantastic. It certainly doesn't hurt to rewatch it every now and then. Emmett O'Brien says, I really loved your point on Undiscovered Country in regards to Picard Season 3 with the Enterprise D. They didn't need to haul out the classic 1701. It's a point I quote from you, so thanks for that. Well, I mean, I think that's important, that, like, it would have, it's just a step too far. It's like, okay, you're taking things too far. Getting the, it's too many gimmicks, right? It's too many gimmicks, which I think is a version of what I say in that video. You've got the original cast back together. That's your gimmick. That's your hook. That's your show. If you go, if you say, not only is the original cast back together for the first time, but guess what? We got their old ship too. It's like, all right, now you've gone too far. Now this isn't a TV show anymore. Now this is just wish fulfillment for nostalgic, sentimental nerds. Now this is no longer a drama. This is like it's Trekkie fantasy camp. So yeah. I mean, the Undiscovered Country did just fine with the Enterprise they already had. They didn't have to go back and bring out the classic Enterprise with the classic bridge and make it look like the TV show. They didn't need to do. They said, no, we're not making this for children. We're making this for grown-ups, and the grown-ups will understand. That ship is gone. This is the ship they have now, and it's just fine. David Colby also, Move Along Home has a fun twist. It's just a game. Ho ho, exactly. And even I forget the character's name, but Joel Brooks's character, like thinking it was kind of weird that they didn't think it was a game. It was like, of course it's just a game. You think we would come here and put you all in mortal danger? Like, for real? What kind of people do you think we are? Yeah, so Geek, you do look a lot like Joel Brooks. You do look a lot like Joel Brooks, yeah. Joel Brooks did, my favorite thing he ever did was he guest starred in 2 episodes of Three's Company as a seemingly quite disreputable psychiatrist named Dr. Prescott. And god damn, he's funny. God damn, he's funny in those episodes. I do love that ham, Dana. I do love that ham. That ship has sailed, you mean? Yes, Wim, exactly. That ship has sailed. That ship has sailed. Harry Behemoth, you know what? I was uncertain about Rogue One just because of that very, very thing, that it's like, are they making an entire movie just to explain how the Death Star plans got in the Rebel hands? But I actually really like Rogue One. I think because it does more than that, because it actually tells a story in its own right with characters that you can care about and get invested in, and a story that is worth telling. So I actually really liked Rogue One because it didn't feel like it was just there to explain how they got the plans. Now, I'm not a huge fan of the ending where they basically take it right up to the start of Star Wars. I felt like that was too much, and I felt like, the Darth Vader stuff at the very end was too much, where he's, throwing everybody around in the hallway. I don't think we needed that. And I thought CGI Leia was too much, like all of that stuff. But everything up until the basically the death of all of the main characters, everything up until that point, I thought was terrific. And I feel like we could have gotten an ending that established, that they succeeded in their mission without going full bore. Oh, look at all these Easter eggs that we're throwing at you all of a sudden. I don't think we needed that. But for the most part, I thought Rogue One was very good. Kirak with another super chat says, why so much hate for Move Along Home? Alan Moraine, count to 4. What's to hate? You know what? That. And I don't know why. Again, I think some Trekkies are just weird, but in so many of the comments that people leave on my videos where they reference that episode in a negative way, they almost always mention Alan Moraine, count to 4. Like, I feel like they think that scene is cringy. They think they're embarrassed. They have secondhand embarrassment for the characters, which I think you're supposed to. I feel like that, like they have to do a silly, somewhat embarrassing thing to get through to the next stage of the puzzle, right? So you're not supposed to watch them, play hopscotch and sing the silly song. And yeah, I mean, it's supposed to be silly, right? But there are some people that just they just really, really react badly to that. Because almost every time someone leaves a comment on my stuff, or even when I see people talking about it on Twitter or whatever, and they're hating on that episode, they're like, the Alan Moraine one, Alan Moraine, count to 4. Oh my God. It's like, okay. I mean, I don't think there's anything all that bad about that. Yeah, it's goofy. It's supposed to be goofy. It's okay for Star Trek to be goofy sometimes. Another super chat from Kirak. Thank you very much, my friend. Joel Brooks was in Lois and Clark as one of my favorite villains. Also, he was in 6 Feet Under. I love that actor and the amount of acting he can bring to the table. If you have seen 6 Feet Under, I highly recommend it. He was also in an episode of Murder, She Wrote, I believe, and he was really good in that too. Yeah, he's fantastic. He's fantastic. Evan says season 3 of Picard, presumably, was fan service first and plot fourth. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Oh, CMX, Summer of Geek and Three's Company. That would be fantastic. That would be fantastic. Kara, yeah, it's very similar. Yeah, Move Along Home and Shore Leave do have some things in common. Yeah, where it turns out it turns out that the apparent jeopardy was not real all along, because even in Shore Leave they actually die, but they can just be fixed. So yeah, that is very similar. I think Rogue One is better than Andor. Andrew says the best thing about Rogue One is that it's set up, and I think Rogue One is so much better than Andor. Andor has its moments. When Andor is good, Andor is really good, but it's got like 2 or 3 good episodes out of a 12 episode season, and the rest of it I find, I know a lot of people like it, and I'm glad that it's there, and I'm glad that it's Star Wars trying to do something different and telling a story with a different tone. I think the idea of it is great. And I support it 100%, but my God, what a boring fucking show. So to me, and like, okay, yeah, Andor. Rogue One is a good movie. The best part of Rogue One is not that it set up Andor. Emmett O'Brien, this is a really good point. I think I've said something like this, maybe not this directly, in my videos in the past as well. If Relics, which is the Scotty guest star episode of TNG, if Relics was made now, TNG characters would rattle off a bunch of TOS references, Lower Deck style, as opposed to just characters being professional and respectful to a seasoned officer. Yeah, and not just being professional and respectful, but like, they're not nerds, right? Like, imagine if Douglas MacArthur, traveled through time and found himself on a modern day U.S. Navy vessel. I mean, most of the people on that ship would probably know who Douglas MacArthur is, or would at least recognize the name, but they wouldn't be like quoting lines from his biography and asking him questions about like specific things he did during his career, because most people don't know that shit. Because his life and his military career, while very famous and very notable in American history, it's not episodes of a TV show, and most people don't know that shit. And like I keep saying over and over again, whenever I talk about this, I don't think characters in a TV show should be written like people who watch the show. Like, they should be written like people who live in that world. And yeah, you can phrase it as the characters being professional and respectful. But to me, my issue with it isn't even that. It's that most of the people on this ship probably don't even know this stuff. Why would they? They probably know who Scotty is, because you would imagine that the crew of the Captain Kirk Enterprise is probably relatively famous, but does everybody have all their fucking missions memorized? No, probably not. Probably not even Geordi. And Geordi's the chief engineer. I'm sure he knows who Scotty is, right? He probably learned about Scotty in the academy. But he doesn't know every fucking thing that ever happened to him. He didn't watch the show. Like Captain Picard and Riker and Troy and Crusher and Worf and Jurley, they didn't watch Star Trek. That's one of my biggest problems with Lower Decks, is that it's like they watched Star Trek. And I just don't think that's a very good way to write. I don't think it's funny, and I don't think it's entertaining. I think it's cheap and lazy and shallow. Oh, it's like they're Star Trek. It's like they watch the show, but I don't. Yeah. Anyway, couple more super chats here, and I'm going to start wrapping up because we're 5 minutes to the hour. John Burns, May 20th, Victoria Day, Superman, big screen. Yeah, that is next year, right? Next year it comes out on May 20th. And a super chat from Ethan Horn. Thank you very much, Ethan. Here is some money for finally giving me something to disagree with you about. Andor is my favorite Star Wars. Much appreciated. Well, thank you for paying me for disagreeing with you about something. I appreciate that too. Like I said, I mean, I'm not a hater on Andor. I do think it has been overpraised. But I mean, there were particular, when it worked for me, it really worked. I just felt like for the most part, there was a lot of tedium in between the moments that really worked for me. Yeah, a hummus hero states it, pretty well. Andor was okay, but the overall pacing of most of the season was too slow. Yeah, it just one of the episodes. I think it's the second, and I know that I think I've mentioned this before, but I think it's the second episode of the prison arc when Andor is in the prison. The last episode of that, the one where they actually break out of prison, that's one of the best episodes of the show. That's a good episode. But the one right before that, it gets to the end. And when you get that, there's that final shot where like the camera pushes in on Andor doing his job, like making the Death Star parts in the workshop, and the camera pushes in on that really dramatically, like to try to convince us that something is happening when nothing is happening at all. And they do that final shot and it cuts to black, and that's the end of the episode. And I swear to God, I'm telling the truth. I laughed out loud. When that was the end of that episode, because nothing happened in that episode. They did an entire episode where nothing fucking happened. It was just people standing around talking about shit that maybe they were going to do at some point in the future. Nothing happened. An entire episode of television. And then they end on this phony, completely manufactured moment of like suspense and drama. And I'm like, you have got to be fucking kidding me. So, it made me laugh. I'll give it that much. Anyway, let me do my wrap up here, and then I'll come back for some final questions, and then we'll end the show. So, I saw Geek putting the links in the chat. Please make use of those. Also, don't forget, in the same vein, charitylinks.page to help out some friends of ours who need a helping hand. That is maintained by Geek, and a lot of the links that were just shared in the chat are also in charitylinks.page, as well as some other ones. So if you can afford to help out some friends of ours who need a helping hand, please consider doing that. Good night, Dana. Thanks for asking an awesome question to start us off with, and thanks for being here as always. If you want to support my work on this channel, you can do so in a couple of different ways. You can go to patreon.com/Steve Shives to become a patron, or you can just click the join button right here on the YouTube page to become a channel member. And as far as this live stream goes, the benefit of both of those is the same, which is for any level of patronage or channel membership, you can submit your questions ahead of time for these Ask Away live streams. And the questions I get ahead of time from patrons and members are the ones I answer in the first part of the show. So if that's something you think is interesting or worth throwing me a couple of bucks a month, please do so. Also, if you enjoy my YouTube stuff, you might enjoy my podcast side projects, where I co-host a couple of podcasts on the Let Me Listen family of podcasts. Of course, there's Late Seating, the movie review podcast that I'm on alongside the great Jason Harding, where we take a look at classic films and see if they deserve their reputation, be that reputation good or bad. The new episode of Late Seating is up now, and it is our review of Richard Linklater's 1991 independent film. He shot it in 89, but I don't think it actually came out until 90 or 91. But anyway, Slacker, the sort of the first, not technically not his first feature, but the first Richard Linklater feature that anybody paid attention to. You can listen to our review of Slacker and all of our past reviews as well. And if you like the Star Trek stuff, I'm also on the Ensign's Log, which is the Star Trek themed comedy podcast that I co-star on alongside Jason and, of course, Dana, who was with us in the chat. And we, the three of us, play characters who live and work in the universe of Star Trek in the TNG Deep Space Nine era, and we have our own stories and our own lives kind of going on while TNG and Deep Space Nine stuff happens in the background. And it's a really fun show. We have a great time doing it. We have a great time making it. And most of you who have listened to it seem to like it. So please continue to listen to it and like it if you do. And if you've never checked out the Ensign's log, please do so. Links are in the description. All right, that is it. Let me take one more peek at the live chat and see what we got. Kara, thank you very much for asking your question, and thank you for being here. 255 AD says, my mother told me they have to go to town hall to officially register my grandfather's death. I asked her if he comes back to life if they don't bother. Yeah, like what are they going to do? What are they going to do? I mean, I guess there are at least, I don't know how it works over there in this country. Like there are, when you're settling the affairs of a dead person, there are certain things that you do need an official death certificate for. So you would need to do something like that for those reasons. But yeah, like if you don't officially register, what are they going to do? Yeah, exactly. Is he coming back to life if we don't officially register the death? That's a good joke. Destroy Adora. Why do you assume we have quote? Well, maybe you don't. That's fine too. Daryl let slacker, a word that to many boomers define Gen X, fair or not. Yeah, you know, fair or not, and I think mostly unfair. Slacker did become, and to many people still is, like the definitive portrait of Generation X. And as someone who is not a Gen Xer, I'm a little young to be a Gen Xer, or at least I'm either a super young Gen Xer or a super old millennial. So I don't really closely identify with either generation, but I don't feel like a Gen Xer, but I feel for Gen Xers when I watch Slacker. I'm like, oh, you guys didn't deserve this. Oh, John, did you have another super chat? Let me see. MacArthur, I'm hitting the head. Will you return? I shall return. It's number 2. I'll be right back. All right. It's number 1. I'll be right back. Number 2 might take a little longer. Steve is a boomer. I'm definitely not a boomer, Harry. I'm definitely not a boomer. Yeah, elder millennial. There we go. I like that. Elder millennial. All right. It's a crime. You know, it's probably a crime over here too, 255. Like, yeah, you're supposed to. There are certain legal things that you have to, certain registrations that have to be made when a person dies. It's probably illegal over here not to as well. Anyway, that's it, everybody. I'm calling it a night. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you all so much for the questions and for hanging out. Have a good night. Have a good weekend. Dana and I will be back on Wednesday for Trek Reluctantly. We're watching Deep Space Nine, which will be the episode we're watching is The Assignment. So if you're interested, please join us for that and queue up that episode on your end and watch along with us. And then I'll be back in 2 weeks for another one of these. So thanks a lot and take care, everybody. Bye-bye.